Okay, so let's get started. My name is Jean-Pierre Lacroix, and I'm president of SLD. And I'm filling in for Kathy Crumley from Intel, who had a family emergency. So I'll try and do justice to the energy and excitement that Kathy has when it comes to digital transformation. I have with me here some amazing speakers, people with professionals who have extensive experience on transformation. Stephen Connolly from Engagewear, Frank Alloy from 8 Power, and also Chris Stamper from Bridger. So what I'd like to do is just start off with each one of you. Just introduce yourself, what you do for the organization, and what does the organization do. And I'll start with Stephen Connolly.
Thanks, Jean-Pierre. Yes, Stephen Connolly. Title, I am Senior Director of Products and Partners here at Engagewear. And for those people that are attending, you might not know who Engagewear is, and that's only because we launched the name about a week and a half ago. We're formerly the companies known as Time Trade, the intelligent appointment specialist for financial services, retailing, and the healthcare industry, as well as the Silver Cloud business, which designed knowledge bases and capabilities for people to do self-service, both for employees and their consumers. And we're probably the most aptly named company out there right now, because what we try to do is help our customers, namely members and customers of banks and credit unions, to help engage more with those institutions to get the answers that they need, meet with the right people, whether that's remotely or in branches, and really understand what they need to do to manage their finances, get the credit they need, whether that's commercial credit or buy their house, or any of the number of questions that you could ask a bank or a credit union. So I work in a way that helps our products and work with some great partners like all the ones on this call, as well as a few other key ones, and really happy to be talking with you guys today.
Thank you, Stephen. Frank Alloy from at Power. Can you talk a little bit about your company?
Sure. So 8 Power, I'm actually the founder of 8 Power 25 years ago, which sometimes is hard to believe, but I feel very fortunate about that. We are a company that's pretty well born of primary research, but over the years have expanded out into a bunch of different training and consulting initiatives. And now we're really focused on talent optimization that we'll certainly talk upon today. Very CX and EX focused. It's funny, what do you do for the firm? I know that there's a couple from my firm on this, and I'm happy to hear what they say I do if they want to crank in on the Q&A there and see responses I get. So thanks for including me on this, though. I'm very much so looking forward to it. I thought a lot of the sessions today, including a couple of the people in our consortium, went very, very well. So appreciate being on there.
Thank you very much, Frank. And Chris, you want to talk a little bit about Bridger and yourself?
Yeah, thanks very much, JP. Bridger is a global transformation design and delivery company, and we're really focused on human-centered transformation, and really focused on value creation that delivers engagement for both employees and customers. So it's a co-creation model where we work directly to do transformation that supports both the employee and the customer. And pretty passionate about working with clients all over the world around their transformation needs and bringing those to life.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us panelists. My first question is, we are hearing a lot about banking digital transformation. What are some of the biggest hurdles or pain points that your company is addressing for the banking market today around digital transformation? And let me start with the last person who spoke, Chris. Chris, why don't you answer this question?
Yeah, thanks, JP. My experience has been, we've talked for a number of years about a tipping point on digital transformation for banking customers, but the pandemic has really served as that inflection point to accelerate the need to transform and find ways to engage and do things differently with your customers, because the customers themselves are demanding to interact and engage in different ways. And so I think what Bridger's working with our clients and what we're doing is demonstrating how do you define what that engagement is, and how do you define how the customers intersect digital technologies, the legacy systems of the branch, and the omni-channel experience that they're expecting to have. And so, it's caused a real, from my experience, just a real need to think differently about the behaviors of what customers are looking for and how you deliver that for them.
Fantastic. Frank, 8Power specializes in insights and also employee training. So how do you see it?
Yeah, so I'm just going to continue with what Chris has sort of thrown out there, right? I mean, the recurring themes really, well, not only in this conference, but in many, is digital transformation really is, to cut costs, right? And to increase efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. And if you look at any of the studies out there, including any of 8Power's, many of the transformation speed bumps are people focused, right? Talent gaps, skill, et cetera, et cetera. And in that manner, what we've really sort of focused in on here over the past, I don't even know how long, 18 months, is talent optimization. As I said earlier, trying to get customer experience and human resources to actually play together, which is the way it should be, in my opinion. And, really the end game is to have them consistently having their employees, crush their brand promise. I mean, that's really what we are trying to do. I feel many times that 8Power, what do you do? How do you do it? I feel that we're a branding company. We're not going to pick out the Pantones and actually set a logo, but we are going to try to help our clients achieve what that logo stands for. And that really just means hiring the right people and inspiring them continuously, and trying to find the employees who should be working at your organization. That's really been one of our major focuses.
Well, that's very interesting, Frank, because in the transformation study that we did, skill gaps, maintaining momentum, and ensuring technology serves human needs are three of the biggest challenge or risk derailers of transformation programs. So obviously, up training, hiring the right individuals and ensuring that they become strong brand ambassadors is critical to transformation.
I do just want to build on that, JP, and what Frank said, which is, I think all of the organizations recognize a need for change, but it's the sustainability of that change, and change is implemented by people. And so it's not enough to write a 300-page deck that says we should change. It's how do you implement the change? How do you train? How do you keep it moving forward? How do you roll it out? And how do you incent people to take that through to final execution? And I think that's a lot of the work that we've been working with our clients on, is making that sustainable change real and the momentum around transformation real.
Yep.
Great. And Stephen, talk to us about your perspective.
It's absolutely stunning, because we have the same messages. We're hearing the same things from our customers, right? So I'm not going to come out here and say, the sky's not blue, it's actually red. A lot of my topics and conversations mimic exactly what Frank and Chris are hearing as well. I'll draw your attention to the portal that we have. We just did a study that was released in May called Digital First Banking Trends Reports. And through our products, which again, allow customers to utilize self-service methods on their banking websites for their customers, as well as internal tools for their employees, and also allow appointment setting capabilities for getting in touch with somebody. And the period of March 20 to March 21 is where we measured this information, and we saw self-service activity on bank or credit websites increased about 69%, which sounds interesting. But chatbot usage on bank and credit union websites and mobile apps increased 272% during that March 20 to March 21%. And we saw an increase in pre-scheduled appointments by almost 80% during that time period. So the shift in how people want to interact with their institution, there's no argument there. People want to do things more digitally and self-service themselves. The problem that we've seen, and Chris and Frank hit it directly on the head, is one of staffing, because inevitably these immature systems that people have don't always get the right answer. We've all experienced the sessions where you're trying to just talk to an actual employee via some chat session, and now you have to wait 10 minutes because the queue for actually getting into a call center has lengthened. And the reason for that is there aren't enough qualified staff to be able to help out with the answers to those questions. So we've seen, unfortunately, the problem where people try to accelerate their digital transformation, and it's one step forward, two step back, because now they're negatively impacting their customer satisfaction rates and causing customers to actually try to understand, hey, which bank can actually give me what I need, which goes again to exactly what my colleagues Frank and Chris were talking about, brand integrity, right? The last thing you want to do is introduce new capabilities that are supposed to actually alleviate and solve problems for your customers, but also then create a different pain point for them, which is a longer transaction rate, a disconnected service to the brand, and overall dissatisfaction with trying to get jobs done.
Yeah, that's a great point, because defection with consumers is all about not solving an issue when they went to the branch, to the bank. And so obviously not having the right person on the assisted channel or within the branch is going to lead to that defection. So I think your study also showed that that having the right engagement and the right appointment setting drives NPS scores for the institutions. Am I correct?
Absolutely. We've done studies and we have actually survey mechanisms within our tools that at the end of the appointment kick off an immediate survey. It basically asks, how'd you like it? And did you get what you need? And we've seen customers, Del One Credit Union in Delaware was a perfect example where they saw a significant increase in their NPS scores after they implemented some appointment scheduling. And intuitively, that makes sense, right? If you allow someone to make an appointment at a date and time that works for your customer, and essentially guarantee that someone's going to be on the other end of that appointment that knows what you're interested in, knows in advance what your questions might be, and we've routed that to the appropriate person that can actually answer those questions. So it's not a situation where you walk in and go, oh, let me get Ralph. Ralph's actually the person you want to talk to, not me, right? That's going to increase satisfaction. And prep time for some of these activities, again, is so important from a staffing perspective. If you don't have the right staff, they're going to be harried for these appointments that are set up on their calendar. We're all professionals. We all recognize those days where you slam back to back to back to back. And by the third appointment, you walk in and you say, I don't know what our agenda is, folks. I'm going to listen quietly for the first 10 minutes, and then I'm going to guess what it is that you need, right? That doesn't happen when people are expecting the service. People know what it is that you're coming to the branch for or to handle virtually, and overall satisfaction, not just with the customers, but with the employees rises because their days are planned. And that's so important now.
That's true convenience. So my second question is, what is an overlooked or underused strategy when it comes to designing and maintaining a digital ecosystem? And I'm going to ask Frank to start answering that question for us.
Sure. So just to continue on what Steve was even talking about, right? All of these things that we're, going to discuss today, I just, be remiss if I didn't even start off and say any data that we collect, right? We're a customer experience and employee experience sort of data collection medium, right? And if that doesn't somehow get to the front line, you're so missing it. So to me, an overlooked strategy, I don't know if it's overlooked. I would just say that if that is not happening in the beginning, literally on day one, when you're looking at how is all this stuff going to permeate to the front line, that is certainly a missed opportunity. Sort of in that same line, right? So our mantra, 8th Power's mantra for the past 25 years, and it still is today, 3 things: assess, align, achieve. And in the assessment phase, which addresses both internal and external sort of elements, it's incredibly important, as I'm even talking about as a piece of this, figuring out how to get the right sort of report and sort of story to the right type of person. It's important in making sure that the course is setting in the right direction. From a research perspective, facilitating a competitor analysis is always a smart idea. And it always yields a great ROI. However, we don't necessarily see that all the time. I'm not sure exactly why. We do a decent amount of competitive intelligence. I mean, I guess I get it. Institutions understandably are very concerned about their, studying sort of their own iteration and experience. However, don't necessarily always take the appropriate effort to study the market, see what the benchmarks are. What are your competitors doing, right? And these can be very simple analyses. They don't have to be long, dragged out things. They can be very succinct, targeted findings. As a matter of fact, you can do this many times using a financial institution's own employees, which is like wildly successful. And we do that repeatedly. Results obviously show your management, what's being done well. If there are gaps there, where can you fill it? And this really, I think, facilitates a better experience all the way through. So that's certainly what comes to my mind, just off the cuff a little bit.
Well, Frank, that's an interesting point, because in the transformation study, one of the metrics that banks use to evaluate the performance is having the right insight. So obviously, understanding the market dynamics and the competitive set is critical in delivering that transformation. Are we playing catch up, or are we leading the pack, right?
Right. So I would even add, so this is kind of a one-off, and this is something that we did post-COVID, a study where we asked people, how familiar that they even were with an interactive teller machine. And at that point, they were starting to gain a little bit of traction, but arguably, had a long way to go. As a matter of fact, I have the stat somewhere. I think it's about 20% of the people who we surveyed said, yeah, I've used it, I kind of get it. And we were wildly surprised to find that almost half of the people, 46% of the people said that if offered, they would use an ITM as opposed to an in-person teller. And so again, now who would have thought that without kind of going out and trying a little due diligence around it? And that's one thing. And again, we've had, so many different sort of, in your face statistics that have come up, but that's one that I've never forgotten. I always thought, wow, that's sort of an incredible, thing to hear. So.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Or Frank, sorry. Chris, what's your thoughts on, these overlooked or underserved strategies?
Yeah, I think complementary to Frank, the model I always like to push clients and businesses to think about is an outside in, future back model. And so complementary to Frank, you have to look broader than, your traditional set of competitors for insights that will help shape that transformation journey. And I think we tend to go, well, I'll look at the 5 that are around the corner from me because that's probably where I should be looking. And I think one of the things that the collective, the H2D collective is trying to say is look much more broadly than that. Look internationally, look outside of your borders, look for different opinions and approaches that might help shape the insights that will shape your transformation study. And then of course, future back, which is, what is the destination you want to be and where do you think you want to be and where are you today? And then how do you work towards that destination? But by understanding where you think you want to go. And so again, complementary to what Frank was saying, that there are ways to collect those insights and engaging and co-creating. And if you listened to Anita's talk earlier today, some of you may have been on her keynote session, a lot of it is around co-creation with clients, with advisors, with back office people, with front office people, with operations folks. And we tend to say, well, the corporate strategy teams and the marketing teams, well, they know enough about what the transformation should look like. And the reality is the best insights come from groups that you wouldn't typically go to in the organization that are familiar with how the organization runs and what's at the behest of the customers. And so I like to push the companies to think and the organizations to think a little more broadly about how they define what the problem is and where they get those insights from.
That's great. That's great. And Stephen, what's your thoughts on, untapped strategies?
I think it's just trying to examine what your customers are trying to do and fully appreciate how to best deliver those services. We had a conversation the other day with a bank. I won't name them, but we were trying to walk through a bit of a business case to help them with a purchase decision. And the question that we asked them was, what are your growth strategies? And the answer essentially was yes. Right. So there's lots of different products and lots of different services. And, it's almost like the Oklahoma, land grab. We'll want to get as much as we can as soon as possible. And that's not a strategy. Right. So it's trying to understand how you can align your goals and products to your externally facing assets, and whether they're digital or whether they're personal. I'll give you a perfect example. Again, one of our solutions allows easy questions or easy answers to questions that are being asked. Our top question for that time period, March 20 to March 21, for our consumer-facing solution was, what is your bank's routing number? Such a simple question, right? But as you can imagine, most customers aren't doing some sort of treasure hunt to try to figure out what the appropriate routing number is for a bank and write that down on a sheet of paper. They want it because they want to engage in a certain transaction. Most often that's bill pay or direct deposit. During the pandemic, it's going to be mostly bill pay, right? Because unfortunately, people were trying to find jobs and couldn't find them. So most of your solutions out there are going to be associated with bill pay, which is a retail banking solution, right? Associate bill pays to your checking account openings. And one of the things that we're trying to do is not only answer that question about what is your routing, but then partner with great companies like Casisto, for instance, or even Glia, to help facilitate any transactions that they might want to provide through that digital transaction. And it all starts with understanding what is it that your customers are trying to do, and then have that translate to the right assets, be they digital, be they physical, and help answer those questions.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. And just wanted to go back to the poll. There was a poll here that says, how important is it for banks to create the human touch in their digital transformation? We had 43 responses, and 67% said extremely important, and another 19% said somewhat important. So obviously, creating a human touch in the experience is really critical. We know that in our stealth attrition study that we did in 2017, that the more you move a consumer to a digital-only platform, the less loyal they are to a financial institution. So obviously, having that human touch, it could be video, could be chat, or it could be in the branch, is really, really important.
Yeah,
So
I think it's
Oh,
human at any channel. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical at any channel. And I think that's the unique difference. And, most customers haven't met a channel they don't like. And so it's not that channels are detracting from each other. Channels are additive to each other. So I can use the branch and the phone and the web and the ATM and my tablet and POS. And so it's a cumulative build. It's not just a replacement.
Yep, that's a great point, Chris. That's a great point. So let's move on to question number 3. How are banks doing at delivering the human touch and digital transformation for both customers and employees? So I'll ask Chris. Since you talked about that, what's your banking perspective, being a banker?
Yeah, well, I think we're, as a financial industry executive, I think we're doing a reasonably good job at trying to be customer-centric. I think if you look at the majority of websites, and if you listen to the majority of CEOs talk, they talk the right game about being customer-centric. And so I think there's an underlying current of, yes, we should be customer-oriented and doing the right things for our customers. I think there's a disconnect in the strategies between how the employees bring that customer centricity to life and how they're equipped to bring that customer centricity to life. And unfortunately, sometimes the technology or the structure or the process or the rules or the governance don't necessarily align to make that a common happy experience for the consumer. And I think, from my experience, it's a combination of back office, front office, process, compliance, technology, all have to be oriented around the right purpose. And purpose can't be, and as a former chief marketing officer, purpose can't be just something you put up on the wall. It actually has to be something that the organizational lives in its decision hierarchy. So are we making decisions fundamentally that serve that purpose-led model? And if you orient your decisions in that, the outcome is a better experience for the consumer, but it's also a better shareholder experience as well. We know that purpose-led organizations have a 30% better shareholder return rate than non-purpose-led organizations. And so it needs to really affect all of the decisions, all of the structures, and how you go to market for your employees as well as your customers.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
great.
human element.
Stephen, your perspective on that?
Oh boy, from the employee side, I feel like we've lived a lifetime in the last 18 months. It's really been just a challenging journey for banks and credit unions, specifically on the appointment side of our business. We all went to a situation where banks were essential businesses, had to stay open, but branches in many cases were closed. So how do you service customers there? And that was just frantic from an employee perspective, because they couldn't really understand how to best meet the needs of their customers when they wanted to actually interface with people face to face. So we saw a growth of phone-based appointments and virtual appointments. The next milestone was, okay, we can open, but capacity restraints only allow a certain number of people in a branch at a specific time. So that really meant that your senior executives were trying to understand their employee optimization rates across the different branches. You didn't want to be overstaffed in one place and understaffed in another, because again, it would create stress for your employees in trying to understand how do we best meet people's needs. And now that a lot of branches are fully opened and people are having challenges trying to actually hire and retain staff, you've got another measurement of employee efficiency and optimization. When are my busy times throughout the day? Where are my qualified people on certain days? Do they have different branch schedules? And can I optimize around those flexible plans to, again, get my members or get my customers what they need? So it's no exaggeration that branch operations managers have been really pushed through the gamut over these last 18 months, because they've had to reinvent their business strategy multiple times. So we see that constantly. What we try to do again here at Engagewear is deliver those solutions that can help take some of the heat off of the employees with automated solutions that can handle businesses. But really on the appointment scheduling side, one of the great partners that we're working with, Verint, they've got a great product called Cloud Chords, which helps to optimize branch schedules. And we're working hand in hand with them on an integration strategy to align in-branch schedules with appointment availability and appointment volume to help make it easier for branch employees to go, again, oh, here's my day. I feel better because you're showing me exactly what I need to see on a day-to-day basis, and that reduces my stress and anxiety.
That's great, Steve. And that leads right into, Frank, what your organization does. And obviously with a change of behavior and these shifts and pivots that are happening at the branch level, that must put a lot of strain on training and motivating employees.
It's been, again, I'm just going to continue on about Steve and Chris said. This has been brutal for these employees. Customers, I get it that, what an incredible time for everyone. But certainly if you're not that well versed in, you can finish that sentence in whatever, it's going to be very difficult for you to feel confident, in providing any sort of solution, and I think we all know this. So yeah, a lot of our training, we do a lot of in-person training. All of that went virtual. And you know what? You figured it out. I can remember when, a lot of our clients, the ones who, still would have drive up, and these drive up lines were just like, it was ridiculous, right? That's how they interacted. And to Steve's point, now we're going to see many more of these, and we have seen many more of these sort of appointment setting elements, which is wonderful. But hopefully, think about that. Are you coming to the door and you being greeted by a person who actually knows why you're coming there, and you sit down and you probably have 3 things in your mind already, and this is just one sort of example. I did listen to Anita's presentation earlier, which was excellent, by the way, and she mentioned trust. That is an enormous piece of all of this, and for these frontline people to be able to sort of relay trust, they have to feel confident in themselves before they can do this. And I can't say it enough. It's been just a brutal sort of transformation piece for a lot of these people. I do feel like they're coming out of it on the other end. At least sort of the mid managers that we talk to, they kind of get it and have put a lot of things in the right place to be able to do that. But now what we're seeing a lot more of too, and we can maybe talk about it later, is literally choosing the right sort of behavioral, employee even before they get in to the realm of what your culture is about. And we've been doing a decent amount of that, and it goes right back to the whole sort of talent optimization piece. And but I would agree this has been a tough time for each of them. I think a lot of lessons have been learned. But how equipped are you people? I think Chris even said, how equipped are you people to even be able to guide your customers? And what are the components needed to be able to even understand what that is, right? And I think we're going to address this here in a couple of questions that are upcoming in that manner.
Absolutely. Thank you, Frank. And just looking at the polls, what's the biggest barrier to successful transformation in your organization? Too many priorities was 49%. Lack of funding was 16, followed very closely with, actually not enough resources was second, and lack of funding was third. So obviously that lines up with the study we did, but it also lines up with the comments that you're making as a group, that you need to shift and be able to be flexible and also have the right talent to be able to deliver those changes happening, weekly or monthly. So let's move on to the next question. How can banks use digital humans to boost the adoption of digital channels among customers who require us guidance without losing out on the benefits of personalized human interaction? So we did a study last year in March on COVID and the impact on the banking industry, and what we saw and what actually proved to be very accurate was that consumers are shifting their channel to assisted channels, to telephone, video conferencing, and also chat, and that put a lot of strain on the banking industry. So, and then now you have employees who view these digital channels as a threat for their jobs, and I think that's something I'm going to ask Frank to talk about. That there was a discussion I had with EJ from your organization at 8 Powers that talked about trying to train your employees to help customers do the transition. There's a reluctance. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think some of the things that you likely had talked about were, over the past, I don't know, I guess, again, I just keep referring to about 18 months. We've literally developed sort of a model, based on a bunch of different sort of things, including CX research, that, imagine if you could power hiring decisions with CX and sort of behavioral insights all under one platform. That's basically what we have put together. So the early insights on that are, there's increased CX scores, employee retention and satisfaction. And essentially what we're trying to do is, gain the most optimal employee based on position and skill set, combine the research that we have, and that hopefully, and it has from a statistical standpoint, deliver the best possible experience. I think that really is not only something that we are going to continue to ride here over the next
are, both experiencing change. And I think if you think about the spectrum of how consumers want to interact with their financial institution, it's either a combination of, do it for me, do it with me, or let me do it by myself. And very simple structural process, but really addresses of all of the ways that you want to engage. And I think humans and employees have a role to play in each of those sets of interactions, even the do it by myself interaction, whether that's support, confirmational guidance, troubleshooting, all the way to the do it for me or with me, which is, hold my hand and be part of that engagement along the way. And so I think there is a lot of roles to play for digital humans in the adoption and evolution of how customers bank. The other thing I think that's important is, you know, branches aren't going away anytime soon, but branches are definitely different than they were 18 months ago and than they were 3 years ago. And so I think the continued evolution of what a branch is, or what the intersect of that omni-channel kind of customer is going to continue to evolve. And so I think we still have to think differently about, well, what happens at that branch? What's the role of the advisor at that branch? How do you deliver communication and engagement? How do you provide support? And so I think
I just want to recognize that and thank the audience for the questions. They're quite extensive, and so I'll let you guys answer those. I'm just going to wrap up. You've got just each about a minute, minute and a half. The last question is, you know, what is the biggest oversight or mistake a company makes when it comes to preparing employees for digital growth? And I'm going to start with Frank.
Yeah, so mine might be a little odd, but the one comes to mind as I'm listening to this the whole time. You know, I think that one of the biggest oversights is assuming that employees will just naturally learn the bank's tools. That is not the case. As a matter of fact, we did a study for one of the top 4, you know, banks in North America here, the U.S. certainly, about a year, I guess 18 months ago, and they were trying to find out why more employees didn't actually use their services, which I have always thought too. I'm like, man, you work for a bank, why would you not do it? Bottom line, they just don't. A lot of them don't, and they could explain their, you know, financial institutions app, but they couldn't do it in any sort of earnest in their employer's app. And I always thought that was the weirdest thing ever. So, you know, one of the things that we're also trying to do in this whole employee engagement, employee, you know, confidence is the way that I look at it. You know, what is a branded employee? You know, we're creating training environments with our clients that allow these employees to see, feel, use these digital solutions, right? It goes back to communication, trust, all these wonderful things that you want them to sort of pass on to the customers. And to me, that's actually a really big deal. That's just sort of realizing what really is happening out there at the front lines. And as noted, banks, you know, sort of trying to upfront, just looking at these natural behaviors of each employee as they come in. So that's one thing that came to my mind here at the end of this session.
Thank you very much. Stephen, your thoughts?
I'll keep it real short. Don't go it alone, right? Our business, we've gone from responding to RFPs to helping customers write business cases to help justify some of the solutions that they're looking for. So you've got people in place to help manage projects, no doubt, and CFOs to help keep an eye on budgeting. But, you know, engage with customers, with vendors, to try to understand what the options are. We're really in this to try to help you guys, and if we succeed, you succeed. So, you know, don't go it alone. Don't be afraid to pick up the telephone. There's a certain number of ways that we can help without feeling obligated to buy anything. So
that's great. Thank you. And Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's been great to share the panel with everybody. I think from my perspective, 2 things. One is customer insights and really orienting your development and your strategy in true customer insights, so that co-creation, so that they're part of the process. And then the second one is don't skip a deep dive on implementation. Strategy without implementation doesn't even matter. And so if you skip implementation, or you do the surface of what implementation is, and that includes training and communication, as Frank's talked about, to me, you're destined for failure in any sort of program that you roll out. So deeply invest in the implementation plan as much as you do the strategic development.
Well, and that's a great point, Chris, because again, back to the state of transformation, sustaining that momentum of transformation is definitely a big concern for CEOs, as they're investing and trying to retool and reshift the organization, ensuring that the organization has the energy and the passion to get it across the finish line is really, really important. And when you have the dynamics of shifting priorities happening at the same time, that becomes for employees going, well, I thought we were going over here and now we're going over there. And what happened about this project? And why is this one not moving ahead? And why is this one creates a lot of confusion? And so obviously being much more human centric in the transformation and understanding the impact of change happening within the organization is really important and critical to ensuring its success. I want to thank Chris from Bridger, Frank from 8Power, and Stephen Connolly from Engagewear for taking the time and sharing their insights on how to accelerate transformation, digital transformation. I want to thank you, the audience, for taking time out at 5 o'clock. It typically is happy hour, so I want to thank all of you. I really enjoyed the conference and look forward to 2 more sessions. Thank you.
Thanks, JP.
Thank you all.
Good job, JP. Thanks for taking it over, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.